Hello again, webheads. Welcome to what will be my crazy Spider-Man 2 theory video. Today we'll be covering the possible plot of Spider-Man 2 and how Peter comes into contact with the symbiote, and what that means for him and those closest around him.
It's pretty weird, right? I don't know what to do.
Yes, you do.
Oh god, no, not Aunt May, not this again, sorry. Anyway, are we going to get more MJ sneaking around missions? What role will Kraven the Hunter have in all of this? And more importantly, who is Venom? Now, I've seen a lot of chatter online, as I'm sure you all have, suggesting that Peter, for the first time ever, will become Venom.
Are you serious?
So I'm going to have to throw in my 2 pence on how I think it's all going to take place and who does become Venom. Oh, and of course, what involvement will the Osborns have to play in all of this? So stick around as we delve into my theory for Spider-Man 2. So where do we start? I guess it has to be with what we know so far, right? And what we know so far from the trailer is that Peter is starting to change. His attitude is noted by Ganke and Miles at the end of the trailer, and we see glimpses of him being a snappy little asshole.
He's mine.
You sure? He's got big teeth.
So do I.
He's not normally like that, right?
No. He's never like that.
But I think it's safe to say that Peter hasn't been in possession of the symbiote for that long, as pointed out by Miles in that kick-ass scene.
New threads?
So, how and when does Peter come into contact with the Black Ooze? Well, I think Mary Jane Watson is going to prove pivotal in this area. In Spider-Man Season 1, Episode 16, we see Mary Jane come across evidence that Harry was really seriously ill.
What? This can't be for Harry, can it?
It's all so much to take in. Harry's sick?
So, as both Peter and Miles will be preoccupied with Kraven the Hunter, more on that in a moment, it'll free up time for MJ to do some more digging around. In fact, she might just find out that Harry isn't abroad at all, so she ends up tracking him down. And wouldn't you know it, just as she turns up, well, it's going to be bad timing, as this is when Norman's going to try and force Dr. Kirk Connors to release Harry, even though he's warned against it.
But his disease could. Kurt. But we may be underestimating the potential danger.
I said, get him out! Now!
Peter will end up receiving word from MJ that she's found Harry and he better get there quickly, which he does in typical Spider-Man fashion, and just in time to stop Norman. And this is when things will escalate, thanks to Norman. Explosions will probably go off, causing a bit of a stressful environment, perfect for a certain doctor to turn into a lizard. And the fight will obviously ensue, but Peter's going to start getting his ass handed to him. And instead of releasing Harry properly, his back-to-tank's going to get smashed wide open. And as soon as that back-to-tank is smashed open, that's when the Black Ooze will leave Harry instantly, and he'll go straight for Peter. Now joined together with the Black Ooze, Peter feels more powerful than he ever has done before. And with this new power comes the ability to absolutely kick the lizard's ass. This is where we can see Peter start to lose control for the very first time, to the point of where he almost takes a lizard's life, much like that scene at the end of No Way Home. And if not for MJ intervening, he probably would have done. Thankfully, he'll quickly come to his senses, wondering how he got so angry so quickly. The lizard escapes, but not before MJ throws a tracking device on him. And with the lizard now escaped, Peter and MJ go to check on Harry. He's alive, but barely. Norman now comes in blaming Spider-Man for everything. He explains his actions when pressed by MJ, but this only enrages Peter for his blatant lies and almost blows his secret identity to Norman. Norman will end up forcing them both to leave, claiming he's the only one who can look after his son. MJ is worried about Peter and his temper, naturally. She's never seen this side of him before and asks him about the suit. And Peter will become all defensive, stating that if it wasn't for whatever this suit is, they'd have all been lunch for the lizard. His first sign of denial and the symbiont taking control. So, Peter decides that Dr. Connors is the only one who can save Harry and maybe explain the suit to him, seeing as he's presumably been there from the very start and only he knows about this black ooze and what it is.
Take a single host organism, like this one from a nitrogen-based environment. Now I'll add a molecule chain from that suit of yours.
They're bonding.
It's replicating and mutating the molecular structure of its own DNA. It's actually improving on the host organism.
Host organism? That's what I am to this thing?
But not only does the suit bond, in time it replaces. Where do you think you're going? You've got to get that suit off!
I can't, not yet. There's some things I have to take care of first.
Get rid of it!
I need it!
And that will pretty much bring us up to the gameplay trailer as Peter starts to search at Dr. Connor's house. At some point though, just before the trailer starts, Peter will have caught up with Miles over the phones, however it is that they communicate with each other, but Miles is aware that there's a tracker that's been placed. Essentially, he doesn't really know what's happened, which is when we leave the gameplay trailer, with both Miles and Ganke, who were both really surprised with how Peter started acting.
No. He's never like that.
But let's move away from the symbiote for just a moment and talk about Kraven the Hunter. We saw from the trailer that Kraven's story arc is pretty much and looks to be pretty much the same as the comics. I'm all for that, especially if he's bringing a small army with him. He sees himself as a world-class hunter and New York City offers some of the very best. It's simple. I also think Kraven is basically going to be this game's Martin Lee from the first Spider-Man game. Turns out he's not the main antagonist, but he'll provide the story and us, the players, with plenty to do around the city. I'm thinking things are going to be a bit quiet in New York before Kraven arrives, and both Peter and Miles will find out about his arrival when Kraven takes down someone from the pad that we saw from the gameplay trailer. Now, this is the first reason I think Miles Morales is going to be the main protagonist of Spider-Man 2. I think Kraven will take down, not kill, Miles' uncle, the Prowler. This is going to make it personal for Miles. Kraven always seems to be one step ahead though, as he continues to take down other heroes or villains. So, with Peter and Miles trying to help take down Kraven, this is also going to be the point where Peter gets called away to help Mary Jane, leaving Miles to deal with Kraven on his own. So at this point, we'll probably see Peter and Miles' story split apart for a while. Miles with his mission to stop Kraven and rescue his uncle, and Peter having to deal with the symbiote, catching Dr. Connors so he can save Harry and find out about the Black Ooze.
Where do you think you're going? You've got to get that suit off!
I can't, not yet. There's some things I have to take care of first.
Get rid of it!
I need it!
I think the start of this game is going to emphasise the end of gameplay trailer's quote. We'll see Peter and Miles fighting together. They'll teach us some new co-op moves that we'll all be blown away with. Hopefully it'll be Rhino again, like the start of Miles Morales, only this time we'll have even more control of the action and it'll be a great way to start the game again. And it's also going to prove that together, both Peter and Miles are stronger together. And maybe we'll see what they both have in the way of side missions when they're apart. I'm thinking Peter's going to need a new job, so photography of a certain pair of webheads sounds possible. Especially as Miles is there to give Peter a bit more leeway away from web slinging.
New York's only Spider-Man.
So when they do split up in the main story, we'll see things take a real dark turn. Miles will start losing to Kraven, getting beaten at every turn, with Kraven ultimately embarrassing Miles and being no further in rescuing his uncle. Which takes us to Peter and the black symbiote suit. Things are going to turn bad for Peter. On his mission to find the lizard, I'm thinking he's going to get distracted by Kraven's army, giving us the opportunity to play as the Black Symbiote Spider-Man, and hopefully a boss battle or two, maybe against this guy. And we'll see Peter lose even more control to the symbiote, eventually to the point of where he does something completely drastic. Maybe a bit more drastic than that, but it's looking like Peter can't be saved, and the symbiote is taking full control. At this point, MJ calls in Miles. She's not been able to reach him for a while because he's tied up with Kraven and trying to save his uncle, but eventually Miles is going to pick up MJ's voicemail. This is where Miles will be given an impossible choice. Save his uncle, or save his mentor. He can't save them both, much like that scene in the impossible choice that Peter had to make in the first game.
I don't know what to do.
Yes, you do.
Ultimately, we're then going to get the mother of all boss fights. Miles Morales versus Black Symbiote Spider-Man. Which I think could be as amazing as this scene was from Spider-Man No Way Home. It could be bigger, who knows, but wow, I'm excited for it. So, Miles has made his choice, which is obviously dire news for his uncle. And after a hell of a fight, Miles saves Peter from the symbiote. Another reason proving why Miles is the main protagonist of this game and the story. I'm guessing it's going to be with loud noises as per usual.
The suit is in pain. I can feel it.
So, this leaves Kraven. Miles and Peter are together again and they go to try and save Miles' uncle. Unfortunately, they're too late and he's dead. And Kraven has left New York City back for his own environment. So, for the very first time, we chase Kraven and we leave New York. Both Peter and Miles know it's a trap, but Miles is incensed with having his revenge and Peter doesn't want to leave his side. How can he? He owes him his life and his sanity. Peter's not going to let Miles make a mistake that would drive him down a path he wouldn't be able to come back from. Again, this is another reason I think Miles is the main protagonist. Saving Peter, impossible choices, and having to overcome his lust for revenge. But it's now finally time for the question, who is Venom? Well, I think you can guess that I don't think it's going to be Peter. Why would they drastically change one of the best plots from all history of the Spider-Man Venom storylines? You can change things around it to suit your narrative, that's fine, but for me, and how I think this story will go, Eddie Brock is going to be our Venom.
We are Venom.
Apologies, Venom is going to be Venom, with Eddie as the host. Is that better?
Like a turd in the wind.
Fair enough then. I don't think we're going to see Insomniac stray too far away from the Eddie Brock story arc. I think it fits in perfectly with what's already happened so far, and we already know that Eddie is part of this universe. So, perhaps Peter becomes a freelance photographer and instantly becomes a hit with his work. Of course he does, just look at how good his photos of Spider-Man are.
Crap, mega crap. I'll give you $200 for all of them.
And of course this is going to leave Eddie Brock jealous and mad at Peter. Who's this guy who's come from nowhere stealing his limelight? At first it'll seem like a joke to Peter and maybe even winds Eddie up as Spider-Man, along with Miles at his side. This is only going to enrage Eddie against not just Peter, but Spider-Man too. Now fast forward a little bit where Peter has merged with the symbiote. At some point he's going to come across Eddie. Basically because Eddie is obsessed with outdoing Peter to get better photos. He's trying to get everywhere where Spider-Man's going to be. But this time it's not going to be a fun encounter. Now you might be starting to think that this plot sounds very familiar to the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. And apart from everything else that's going on within the game and its story, it basically is, and I don't see why it shouldn't be.
So say we all.
But Eddie being Eddie, he doesn't relent in his search for getting the best photograph possible, just so he can rub it in Peter's face and become number one again. And this will take him to the end of the fight between Miles and Peter. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where Venom will be born. So, with Miles and Peter away in the jungle, Venom now knows everything about everyone. And he has a city as his own personal playground. That's not good for New York.
Enjoy your fame while it lasts.
So, much like the first Spider-Man game, when Sable forces were out in force, Spider-Man had just had his ass handed to him by Doc Ock and the rest of the crew, I think Miles and Peter are going to be returning to the same thing. Now, I know this is a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. It is only a theory after all. Miles and Peter arrive back to another pandemic, only this one is a symbiote pandemic. Venom has started infecting anyone and everyone, not with full-blown symbiote powers, but enough to control them, much like in Web of Shadows, making New York City insane. But on top of that as well, Venom is obsessed with Spider-Man. How dare he reject the powers he gave him, and how dare Miles beat him in a battle? And on top of that, we already know the hatred Eddie has for Peter and Spider-Man. So what that turns into is both Peter and Miles are now New York's most wanted. This is all going to end at the place it's all started, with the Osborns. In the final battle with Venom, Peter thinks the only way to save everyone is by sacrificing himself. It'll be up to Miles to save the day again, and he will, and Venom will be defeated. Unfortunately, in all the commotion, Harry has died. Now, I've already done a video on Are Insomniac planning on a trilogy video. I'll leave a link at the end if you'd like to see it, but I'll give a quick run through now to end this video. So, here's the post-credit scene. Basically, Norman's going to lose the plot. He's already hated for the Devil's Breath pandemic, he's responsible for unleashing the symbiote into New York City, and now Harry is dead. And he blames, you guessed it, our friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man. It could end up being a freak accident or that he just loses his mind completely. But I think we're going to witness the birth of Spider-Man's greatest foe, the Green Goblin. Which will set up nicely for Spider-Man 3. I mean, I wasn't the only one who thought about the Green Goblin back in the first post-credit scene, was I? Before we saw the Black Ooze. The room was green, that was enough for me. But then as well in episode 16 in season 1 we did see a prototype version of a pumpkin bomb and the helmet as well. So the Green Goblin has always been the plan in my opinion.
How observant you are!
This Venom story in Spider-Man 2, as amazing as I'm hoping it will be, is just there to set up what could end up becoming one of the best game trilogies of all time. There we go. My theory of what looks to be an amazing sequel, whatever happens, and hopefully sets up a third game. So, what do you think? Do you agree? Who do you think Venom will turn out to be? Am I stuck in the 90s cartoon plots too much?
Are you serious?
And don't forget that you can catch up with the story so far in the first 3 seasons right here on my channel. Leave your comments below and please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, and remember,